My name is Reverend Stevi Hamill. I use they and she pronouns. I am the campus minister for retreats here in campus ministry. Another affiliation I have with Seattle U is that I was a graduate student over at the School of Theology and Ministry. I define community organizing as a group of people leveraging their collective power to work together for social or systemic change. So I'm familiar with several of the student clubs and organizations on campus, whether or not they have been also involved in organizing. I know Triangle Club, Cutie Pock, Mecha. I know Mecha actually just today posted something on Instagram moving towards organizing. And so I'm familiar with quite a few. I'm an advisor for the Gender Justice Center. And then I'll also say that I know of organizing that went on within the graduate students of the School of Theology and Ministry as it closed. I haven't been able to attend as a protester. As a staff person, as someone as staff, I don't have the protection of academic freedom like students and faculty do. And so I haven't been able to attend as a protester, but I know of some of those protests that have gone on while I've been here. So I know of and haven't attended the two most recent protests or movements for the kind of movements around justice in Gaza and a ceasefire. My question would be is what were the organizers hoping for? I think that's a measure of the effectiveness. I think if the effect hoped for was just more awareness, I do think that that was achieved. I think if the effect hoped for was a statement by the university, obviously that hasn't been achieved. And then I'll also quickly speak to when in between being a grad student, or while I was a grad student, and then this position, while it wasn't SU specific, I think I attended many of the kind of uprising movements for Black Lives Matter in 2020, 2021, and saw SU students there. And I do think in terms of raising awareness and moving the needle on police brutality, I do believe that those were effective. And I think that while they were more citywide, it was very much a part of the SU community. I mean, I do think that especially for nationwide or global things like we're seeing right now with Israel and Palestine, the more parties at play that throw their support towards these sorts of movements, that is helpful. But institutionally, especially for the university, in the university setting, I do think students, what's the right way to say this? I think oftentimes students underestimate how much power they have. And so, yes, it's important to get staff involved. It's important to get faculty involved, right? The more pressure that is put on the systems and powers that be, the better. But I really do think mobilizing students and student opinions, even just in terms of numbers, I think students have so much power to move and activate towards social change. And so it's helpful to have the pairing with faculty, it's helpful to have the pairing with staff. But I really think student mobilization is so, so important. So I haven't had much experience with faculty organizing as a staff person. I can say that I think about even with the most recent faculty organizing that I'm aware of, right? The letter to the president around, again, the conflict in Gaza and calling for ceasefire. I know that they put out a letter to the president. I had signed on to an early draft of one of those letters, but oftentimes faculty organizing looks like letters in terms of social change. I do know that they've organized in the past towards a union, and that has not, that was kind of shut down from what I can hear, but that's kind of my involvement in any faculty organizing. I would say the cause that I was most directly working and organizing towards was when I was a graduate student in 2020. The dean of the School of Theology and Ministry announced to us that they were shutting the School of Theology and Ministry, and that there was a particular timeline for that and particular circumstances around that. And this was right after the pandemic had begun. And so the graduate students at the School of Theology and Ministry organized around that to extend the closure period. The main degree that was being had there was usually a 3-year degree, but because a lot of folks were doing that while working. Some people took 4, 5, 6 years. And so with the closing of that, that meant some people were not able to matriculate, and they had just kind of accepted folks, knowing that they still wouldn't be able to finish their degrees on that timeline. And so there was a lot of organizing. We brought in really involved alumni with the school. We talked to faculty, we talked to staff to kind of organize to get demands met so that the current students would not be harmed in the closing of the school. And so that was actually really effective. I think that one of the demands and hopes was that the school would not close, and that was not met, but some real concrete demands so that current students would not be harmed were met. And so I do think the organizing was effective in many ways. The first tactic that we began with was really just mobilizing folks, current students, and then alumni to write letters to the president and the dean of the school, just for asking for a meeting. And so it was an open meeting. There were hundreds of people on the call, and we basically said, we need an explanation. You haven't been transparent enough with the cause of this. You haven't been transparent enough about the process. We would like an open forum, basically. And we did get that. And so I think just the tactic of letting folks in power know that you have a lot of people who care about this and who are demanding accountability was really, really effective. And then from there, kind of in that space, and in those letters, demanding follow-up, demanding that our voices as constituents, as students, as payers of tuition be heard and accounted for in this process, that the school owed us something because we were students, because we were paying tuition, to get a seat at that table was honored. But that only came from folks, especially alumni. Alumni have a lot of power because they have the opportunity to either donate or not, right? To give funds after they graduate or not. And so tapping the alumni resource as organizers too is a really helpful tactic. And so that is one of the things that we did is we tapped alumni, we tapped current students, we tapped faculty and staff who had a lot of buy-in to the School of Theology and Ministry. And had folks during that forum speak to our demands. And so that was one of the things is we were all very much on the same page about what our demands were. And so as we organized, as we met as groups, we made sure that we weren't coming in with competing interests. We made sure that anyone who was speaking had a clear list of demands and that those were repeated multiple times in writing and verbally. So the folks that we were organizing against, for lack of a better word, right, the systems at play knew exactly what we wanted and then could either answer yes or say, here's where we need to compromise, or no, we're unwilling to meet that demand. I think they were pretty effective. I think, right, with something so emotional as a school closing that you dearly love, like ultimate efficacy would look like, oh, the school doesn't close. Of course, we didn't get that. But in terms, again, like I said, of minimal harm being done to the students who were already enrolled, I do think that that was achieved. There has to be clarity of purpose. There has to be, at least for effective organizing, there has to be a checking in with the constituents who are actually going to be most harmed. So I think about some of the faculty organizing that I've seen, that some of the propositions they put forward haven't actually checked with the people who are going to be doing the work, right? So saying this person on campus should be involved in this way, and they haven't actually, it's faculty organizing, and they didn't check with the staff who is going to be doing that, right? And so a real respect for all folks involved in the process, right? Organizing is about the people, right? Like hopefully the folks on the margins. And so if both student organizing and faculty organizing isn't taking into account who they're organizing for and centering those communities, that's not community organizing, that's patronizing. And so I think that's something that both ought to have in common. People have power, like faculty have power, students have power, and so how do we leverage that belief in communal power to keep systems accountable to harm? A mission-based school like SU, I really do believe, I wouldn't work here if I didn't believe that the university does care about its students as people, and it is also under the vestiges of capitalism, and so you all are also consumers. And I think that's like a terrible thing in some ways, right? Capitalism is like bad for our souls or whatever, but to leverage the fact that y'all are consumers, consumer power is a huge thing. And so yes, we can fight against capitalism and the ways that that hurts and harms us, but we're still in that system. And so I would say reminding yourselves that you are people first and that you have power together, collective power, but don't forget that the university knows that y'all are consumers and are paying the money. Because that is, I think when you have clarity around that, you can leverage that in different ways, even if it feels icky, right? That's the reality. And I think that's some of the advice I would have for student organizers is having clarity around all the different systems at play the best you can, and being able to really have insight into how much power you have, which is a lot. So I just want to give you all that encouragement too. Y'all have a lot of power.